Right, so the next stage is to get primary research, and the primary research is done by simply just getting hold of a bag, buying one that I've used in the previous page on my mood board, and just by taking the product apart and seeing how it's put together and analysing why it is we've put together a certain way and what benefits there are for it. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here just so we can see some of the annotations I've placed in. This is the actual picture of the design sheet. Just go back one. There we go, so we've done the design sheet, we've got the carrier bag image board, and from the image board and the summary we said that we was going to disassemble the product, and so we've disassembled the product until it looks pretty much like this. Okay, so what have we put on here? Okay, well the first thing is that we've actually stated that the bag is made out of paper and that we've got a bag that's very similar. You can see how the bag's been took apart. I've took pictures at every stage that I thought was possible. This shows the bag right at the start with the actual base folded up, and this is just a close-up of how the bottom's sealed, and it's shaped like an envelope sort of shape with tabs overlapping. The reason it overlaps is because it creates strength, but it also allows glue tabs as well. They're both folded accurately. You can see I've took a scalpel and started to take away some of the actual gluing element so you can see where it was glued and see how the bag was actually folded. So on the second stage, what we've actually done is put the bag in a position where we can see that the bottom flap is posted down, and then we've done exactly the same for number 3 to see how it's folded up. Now at this point we learned something quite unique about this bag, in that when you look through to the bottom part it's sort of double folded, so the actual base of the bag is twice as strong as the sides of the bag, and that's just how it's been mass produced and cut into place. It was then, you could see really that the bag itself was actually quite weak, and it was only glued down one side, so I was trying to count all the parts it was glued in. So in fact there was only 3 glue tabs. There was this one at the top, and then a long strip that was glued down the side, and this was glued onto another tab that was folded over. And so I've used the scalpel to cut down the edge, and like the photo shows there, the bag was literally glued down a seam. This was about an inch, it was 25mm that was folded over, and that glue space helps add to the rigidity and the strength of the bag. Once we've cut down there, we could open the bag out and see the actual template. Well, the template itself isn't difficult, it's just a square. We can see that it's into 4 parts. So down this part here we have the first side, the side of the bag, or the gusset, the first gusset, the opposite side of the bag, and then the final gusset, and right down the edge here the seam has been folded over. This would be very easy to replicate, and it's very easy to draw on 2D design. So when I come to do my designs, I'm going to use the information I've found from here and find the easiest possible way to produce the bag. Now I'm going to be looking at laminating and encapsulating my bags. This may not be the method that I could use to mass produce, but what I can see on there is things like the creasing tool marks that are used in production, and like I say, how many times it's actually being glued. The handles were also quite important to look at. Now what I noticed on the handles is 2 things. One is that obviously it's the same colour as the bag. The second part is that the actual glue strip wasn't directly at the top of the bag, it was inside the bag, so it was hard to be seen. It's about 1 centimetre from the top, and on the side of the bag there was another strong strip glued first onto the side wall of the bag. That was followed then by the straw handle, which was folded over. The edge of that was flattened, presumably to increase the surface area to glue and to make it easy to glue, and then just for protection and to make it stronger there was another strip that went over there to hide it and to protect the actual join. I would have thought that this bag wouldn't be able to hold quite a lot of weight, not because of the base of it and the bottom of it, but simply because of the handles. It's not the best method of inserting handles into the bag. Indeed, if you're going to use a lot of weight, then simply putting a hole through thicker card or laminated GSM, and then spreading other materials through, such as things like ribbon, would make it a lot stronger to hold a lot more weight. And so when we look at things like clothing bags and things for heavy coats and things like that, that tends to be where they use the ribbons and that type of handle onto the bag. So at this point I've come up with loads of ideas, I've got loads of information from disassembling the product, and I've also gained a lot of marks against the specification because I've actually disassembled the product and evaluated it, because this is part of the evaluation and this is something that needs to go throughout the folder. So at each section where I've done summaries, or when I've done things like this, investigation and evaluation, it all adds up to the top marks. So as you go through your folder, by the time you get to the last section of evaluating your products, we should be able to look holistically across the folder and say, well, actually the evaluations took part at each section, and it has to really if the product is to evolve and if you're to make modifications and to apply what you've learned from tasks like this. So in product design, where we disassemble lights, it's exactly the same. Some people call it benchmarking because you're looking at what's already out there, but basically the idea of doing this is to try and replicate a mock-up that looks professional, that you could take into an industry or take into a client and deliver a pitch, a bit like Dragon's Den. It needs to look real, even if it's a mock-up or a prototype. Right, from this stage then, the next stage from here is to actually start to design and produce our bags. Now we're going to do this one of two ways. I'm going to do this a simple way, where we're just going to use A4 paper and a printer and laminate and make a bag that way. Then we're going to look at doing some lino cutting, vinyl cutting, and then finally, once we've done the vinyl cutting, we'll also look at using CAD to either laser cut the net of the box or the net of the bag out, just to get some cam in there, or again we'll use a vinyl cutter to cut through the card and to make the score marks. And that's the next stage. So the next stage is to start designing our final product, at which point every time you do something through the designing process you need to take a picture. I always ask students to take pictures on the phone. You can upload it to whichever sort of media that you wish to, or email it into the school and then do it into your folder, but really at this stage it's down to you to record everything that you're doing step by step, and that way it gives you a visual link to remember the sort of things that was happening at that time. It's very easy when you start making to get into the making and forget about all the writing and forget about the evaluation. It's a lot harder when you're 3 months down the line trying to remember all the problems that you had and what went wrong. And it's important that you document everything that goes wrong from this point, because once you've started making, that's the only evidence the examiner can really have in the folder to say that you've actually made that product. Okay then, next stage then is to look at how we reprint a bag and make a bag and encapsulate it.